going on, everyone? It's your boy Adi. Welcome to the AU Show, your go-to source for golden gems. Today, I have the pleasure of bringing on a very good friend. We've been through the trenches. It's been a long time in the making, but he's based in Atlanta. He's a senior cybersecurity engineer. He's been to pretty much every tech conference in the last couple of years that you could think of. He's a public speaker, but most of all, he's a true tech enthusiast. Everyone, welcome Abdie Mohamed to the show. What's going on, brother?
My man Adi, appreciate you having me, bro. I'm excited to be here.
Likewise, there's so many things to cover, but before we dive into what you're doing right now, I always love to bring it back to the beginnings, man. And so I feel like everyone's child is so different, and I feel like there's so many different personality types. And so I'm just curious, for you, man, let's say you were like 6 or 7, take me back to then. Were you more of the quiet kid, right? You just did your own thing in the classroom, not bother
Yeah.
anyone, no one knew who Abdi was. Were you the comedian? Or were you the kid where like the principal had your parents on speed dial, like he did it again, come pick him up out for
Yeah.
detention? Or were you a different lane? What was Abby like that?
Yes. Around 6 or 7 years old, I wouldn't say I was a really, really good kid. However, I'd have like sprints, like quick seasons, 3 months I'm doing good. And the next thing you know, I'm fighting with somebody in class, or I drop a curse word in class. That was like 6, 7 year old me. Being a little boy, I would like to wrestle with my classmates, some of my friends in class. Uh, yeah, I would say that I watched a lot of Dragon Ball Z around that age too.
Hey,
Yeah, I played a lot of Dragon Ball, like the original Budokai games. I remember playing that. Yeah, playing lots of that, lots of Ratchet and Clank and Jack. So I'd play those games, and I'd come to school, and I think, yeah, like I'm that main character from the video game. I can do what I want. And sometimes I
right.
kind of got a little carried away, but overall I was a decent kid. I would say, past 6, 7 years old, like, going into middle school, that's when I had a brief, villain era. Around that time, or like middle school, I was listening to a lot of gangster rap, and I would, sag my pants because I thought I was a gangster. I try to wear, certain colors, because I'm from Southern California, right? So I try to wear any quote unquote gang affiliated colors because all the cool guys that I knew around that age, they not all, but a good amount that I looked up to at the time were engaged in that type of behavior. They're quote unquote gang members, and I wanted to be part of the cool kids club. So, around that time, I would say things, started to change. Not that I committed any crimes except maybe, shoplifting, but at the local grocery store next to the middle school. But yeah, I would say around that time, that's when, I had trouble in school, and I had just trouble finding a healthy, positive lane. And while going through puberty, if that makes up for anything.
That makes so much sense. The villain era, though, that is quite a way to put it. But no, I think a lot of kids went through that. I think we all want to be considered cool at that age, right? And so, whether it's the movies, the TV shows, the music list, those are all our just primary influences. So that makes a lot of sense. I guess were your siblings on the same wave as you two back then, or no? Do you feel like you were totally different from like your siblings at that age and like other people around you?
Yeah, great question, bro. So I have 8 siblings. I have one older sister, and I have one younger brother that I'm a few years older than, about 4 years older than, and then I have a bunch of other sisters as well. I have like 7 sisters in total, one younger brother. So amongst all of us, I think I was probably the most chaotic one during my teenage years. Because when I got angry, it led to violent outbursts inside the home. You
Hmm.
know, trying to breaking a glass on the ground or something because I'm upset, or throwing the remote controller on my brother's head because I was upset. Just unhealthy ways of dealing with anger, right? Like ways that were not conducive, to a healthy life, a healthy household. So for me, amongst my family, I think I had probably the most amount of I expressed the most amount of deviance at once. I mean, everybody goes through that phase, but I think amongst my family, my immediate family, amongst my siblings, definitely I believe I was pretty all over the place. Like I was listening to nobody, when I was in middle school. Like it was very rare. I was listening to my mom, I was listening to my dad. Yeah, it was definitely a very very interesting time. A lot of lessons learned. I would say with my family. Luckily, my mom and dad didn't give up on me. My siblings didn't give up on me. They still fed me and still kept me in the house. So praise God. We're here today. So I would say, yeah. I think I did have some older friends, some older cousins that may have engaged in those type of negative behaviors that I probably took inspiration from. But I took a lot of inspiration from the music videos, and just the environment of going to school where a lot of young teenagers, they're sagging to their ankles. They got a do-rag on. They got like a bandana in their back pocket. At the time, being smart wasn't cool. At the time, being educated wasn't cool. Taking class seriously wasn't cool, right? It was kind of a F school type of thing. So yeah, I would say definitely the environment had a lot to do with it. But glad my parents and God's grace kind of reeled me back in.
For sure. I think again, I think every boy, I think every kid goes to that. But I think there's a lot of heavy hitters in the music space from the LA area, or just SoCal. So I guess who were your top three artists growing up? I gotta
Man,
ask.
man, top three artists growing up from SoCal. My favorite is Nipsey Hussle. That's just like he's the GOAT for me as far as my favorite artist from California. And the reason why I say that is because, if you listen to Nipsey's music back in 2000, 2008, and then you listen to his music right before he passed, it's complete metamorphosis. It's a complete metamorphosis. His music went from complete gangster rap, robbing, killing, etc., to storytelling, inspiration, spreading words of affirmation to a lot of young men that needed to hear, some of his songs. A lot of young men and women, and yeah, it's a lot of inspiration. If you listen to his especially his last album, Victory Lap, you'll get a lot of inspiration from it. A lot of storytelling, a lot of metaphors, a lot of syllables, a lot of not syllables. There was another S word I wanted to use, but it's not coming to me right now. But a lot of literary devices that he used to tell a very beautiful story that is very very inspirational. So Nipsey Hussle for sure number one. Who else did I listen to growing up? Some Snoop Dogg, The Game. It's hard to put top three. I'd say yeah, Nipsey Hussle, The Game, Snoop Dogg, a little bit of E40. Who else from California that I really like listening to?
Does Kendrick make the
YG.
cut or no?
No, Kendrick too for sure. Kendrick too. But I wasn't really big into Kendrick till like my adult years. But
Okay.
but growing up for sure, YG. Listening to YG, I remember in high school, freshman year in high school, listening to YG. I'm like, oh my God, who is this guy? This guy's super cool. So yeah. But these days I don't really listen to too much rap as much as I used to. I still listen to rap, but I try to dial back how much of the negative stuff that I listen to. Like if I'm working out, I'm probably gonna blast some gangster rap or some rock music.
Right.
But besides that, like if I'm sitting trying to focus and do work, no, I can't listen to that stuff. I can't get anything done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't get nothing done.
That's just gonna context switch going wrong there. But no, that makes sense, man. And I know again you were in your rebellious phase, but I'm just curious, maybe at like what age it could have been, like earlier in your years, and maybe when you were in college, were you like exposed to like technology as a whole, and then to like what drew you to tech? Like, was there maybe a class? I don't know. Did you
Yeah.
like hop on the Apple wave early? Were you had the iPod, or like just some gadget you're like, this is really cool, and like that led you to want to go down that path, or like when was that moment for you?
Yeah, so great question. So how I got into technology, I kind of fell into it. So originally, when I went to community college, right, my plan was like, hey, I took an economics course and I'm like, oh my God, I want to become an economist. I love understanding how trade works, how opportunity costs work, or how barter works, how the whole system works, right? Capitalism, businesses, Federal Reserve, taxation, all these different concepts that help us understand how the current world works. And I loved studying economics because it really gave me a foundation of understanding, how to navigate the world as it is.
Right.
And yeah, I learned a lot, and I wanted to become an economist because I wanted to do this full time. And then it wasn't until until like I was about to graduate with my associate's degree at Grossmont College, I realized, hey, if I want to do this economics thing full time, I'm going to have to get a PhD, which means I'm gonna have to most likely get a master's first and then follow up with a PhD. I come from a low income family, like many people in the country. I come from a low income family. But before I go further, I do want to say I grew up really rich. I was born in America and have two parents, a mom and dad that love me and poured everything they can into me. In my opinion, I'm rich. I believe I am rich. It's a fact, actually. I grew up rich, all right? Before I talk about being low income. But yeah, so I grew up low income, a very, and, I'm like, all right, well, I want to make some money. That way I can support myself and my family. I was like, okay, I don't want to just be in school that long because getting a master's and a PhD, that would have been additional, another 4 to 5 years of schooling. At the time, I was like, oh my God, 4 or 5 years is forever. You know how when we're young, we're like
Right.
4 or 5 years is forever. Like that's I'm never gonna make it out there. Oh my God! But like now as
It's
adults,
never
you're like, oh,
ending.
4 or 5 years, 4 or 5 years as an adult, you're like, you know what? Yeah, I can commit to 4 or 5 years. I can do something 4 or 5 years. But back then, I was like, oh my God, 4 or 5 years. I'm gonna be old. It's gonna be too late, right? But by the time, that sense of urgency, it hit me hard. So I went to university. I transferred to university. I went to San Diego State University, by the way, for those watching. Go Aztecs. Shout out to the Aztecs. And yeah, man, I looked around and thought, okay, what about technology? I don't know exactly what I want to do, but I want to look into technology. So I looked at different, majors that I could switch into. I think computer science, computer engineering, and management information systems. Those were the three options. Given that I had an economics background, most of the curriculum to declare the management information systems major, I've already completed it,
Right.
right? So the smoothest pivot was management information systems. Now, if I tried to go computer science or computer engineering, it would have taken me a lot longer to graduate out of school. And again, I was blessed with financial aid because I come from a low income family, and I thought, all right, what's the fastest way out of college? Learn some technology and get out of college, get a tech job. Don't know exactly what I want to do yet, but get a tech job. That's the main thing. So I go out. I had like two classes missing, so I take the two classes and I declare that major to management information systems. And yeah, that was my first taste of technology. And then I had my first tech role as a student intern, student assistant at San Diego State University. I did that job on my senior year. One of my friends actually gave me a referral for that job. It was one of those jobs where like the vice president of IT, if he's looking for assistance, what he would do is he would offer the job based off of referrals. Other students refer the students at the time. So my good friend Kevin, he referred me to the job, and I got the job, and I did that my last year, my senior year of college, as I'm trying to scramble to find a job. It was rough. It took me like 9 10 minutes to find my first tech role post post graduation. So yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, that one year that I worked under the vice president of IT at San Diego State University, it opened my eyes to a lot of things. I want to give another shout out to my friend Malcolm Gordon. He was a cybersecurity engineer that was also part of National Society of Black Engineers. It's an organization dedicated to create more black scientists, engineers, technologists, mathematicians, etc. And my friend Malcolm, he gave me the idea of looking into cybersecurity. And that's how I got into cybersecurity as my first role post graduation with my master's degree.
I love that, brother. And again, I just want to give you a shout out for, I think, dude, I love how you've always been family centered, but I think just the humility, the gratitude, and family oriented is like some of the things I love about you. So I just want to give you a shout out right there. And then two,
Appreciate it.
I don't think I told you, but I actually started off in economics, too, and ended up in MIS. So I think it was cool for you to hear that because I was like, yeah, because I went in, I'm thinking economics, supply and demand seemed interesting. You get to the point
Yeah.
like, that's a long time to be in school. And I'm not trying to be a doctor, but that still sounds like a long time. So yeah, a lot of that resonated with me. And then two, want to get into, I guess, what was it like to actually like guess get your hands on experience like at tech, right? That whole year, I think too, it sounded like that was your first experience. So I guess what were the things that you saw that your VP of IT did that you're like, oh, this is like cool. I want to take this with me moving on versus maybe like, okay, I appreciate what he's doing, but maybe there's things that if I was in when I get to that space, I wouldn't do, or like I'd be different. I guess was there
Yeah.
anything key takeaways you got from that experience there?
Yeah, I had a lot of takeaways, but if I had to boil it down to two takeaways, I definitely got hands-on technical experience, like just understanding what is a computer, right? And why do businesses use technology, right? Schools, at the end of the day, universities are at the end of the day, they are businesses. They have to make money, right? They have to measure, they have to make money. They have to raise money. They have to use technology to solve business problems, right? I learned early on with the vice president of IT the importance of understanding, you know, businesses rely on technology to solve problems. As a leader, you need to understand how said technology is going to move the business forward. If said technology that you're about to put in hard earned money into does not solve a business problem or push the mission forward, then it's not a good investment. So I learned early on how, as a business, you need technology to fuel where you're trying to get to. It's a superpower, right? Technology is a very precious resource, right? Technology is the reason me and you are doing this thing right now,
Absolutely.
right? Right? It's helped us within our respective careers. It's how we live. We need technology, right? It's almost to the point where we can't live without it. And I realized from at a strategic like C-suite level, oh, these are the type of conversations they have when it comes to investing in technology. Because I was looking into all the different software licenses we were looking to invest into. And there were times where, I'd have to like re-image a Windows machine, a Windows operating system. And, I'm like, okay, I have to re-image this. Well, okay, what is an image? Why do we need to re-image these systems? Why can't we just let them be as is? Why do we have to patch them? What is this thing patching? And it just made me understand that technology is a big, big, big ecosystem. Like technology is a multidisciplinary discipline, right? There's so many different niches that you can get into. It gets crazy, which is why I love the field so much because there's so many different specialties within it, right? And yeah, I would say number one, I learned about technology from the vice president of IT. I learned about technology at a strategic level as well as hands-on experience working with Windows operating systems, patching things. They're doing basic stuff like picking up hardware and taking the hardware to the data center and plugging it up, right? Doing the physical hard work, right? That was very humbling and it was a very great learning experience. And the second thing, Ahdithan, that I learned was the importance of leadership, right? He's the vice president of IT, right? He has to move a certain way inside of his organization. He has to have executive presence. He has to be an effective communicator. He has to have a lot of patience, right? Because as a leader, if you're leading a large organization with different managers reporting into you, different people reporting into you, right? You have to have a lot of patience. You have to know how to bring the best out of people, right? How do you communicate to someone when you're upset? Let's just say there's a big initiative that he wanted to do and he'd get upset. I'd watch my vice president of IT walk out, take a lap, come back 10, 15 minutes later. He's like, all right, I'm good. Time to send that response. I watched him do that. I watched some of the nasty emails that he got, and I watched him handle it like a professional, like a leader, right? I saw some of the politics that come as you move up within an organization, right? Some people call it culture, some people call it politics, organizational behavior, right? And I watched how he navigated difficult conversations. I watched how he navigated difficult conversations with me.
Right.
I'll be honest. There were times where I was being a complete knucklehead, right? Instead of actually doing the job, sometimes I'd try to study. And he'd tell me, hey, if you want to study, just let me know, but don't do it behind my back.
That's
You know,
real.
he used to tell, yeah, he used to tell me, hey, if you want to study, I'll let you study on the clock. All right, but don't do it behind my back because that's you're breaching the contract, right? You're breaching the contract. As his teammate, right? And as someone he's mentoring, right? There's a contract, right? I have to do my part, and he's gonna do his part, right? If I want to be that, evolve and be great at what I'm doing, he mentioned that, hey, I'm gonna pour into you. I'm gonna give you opportunities to grow, but I need you to do your part and execute, right? So I saw a lot of leadership from him, and I still keep up with him till this day. He changed my life, and he just taught me, like leadership is one of those things where it's not, you don't just arrive as a leader. Leadership is every day you're campaigning every day. Every day you're campaigning.
Wow. So many gems, man. We could have just stopped recording right there.
Clip
You
that
dropped.
up right now. Clip that up. Subtitles. Listen. Hashtag leadership. Hashtag welcome to the Ahdithan show. Hashtag it's going up. It's going up.
Absolutely, man. But no, I love that because look, a lot of times, man, people in our generation, we just view as like, damn, it's just an opportunity. Like, it's like not the sexiest thing. It's not the most,
Yeah,
you know, it's not the most elusive thing off the bat. But you learned so many fundamental principles of just life and business and within tech within that. Like, yeah, like there's things that you learned there that some people go their whole career without learning. So I'm glad that you were really able to maximize that opportunity. And you're building on that. And so you mentioned the 10-month job search. I know that in and of itself wasn't fun, but I guess once you navigated that, right? Like to me, the biggest thing going from college to the workforce was like in college, things are very just like progressive and linear in the sense of like inputs, outputs, right? Like if I study really
right.
hard, more times than not, I'm going to do well in school. If I didn't study, I'm going to do
Exactly.
bad, right? And you're building towards graduating, right? Getting a good degree, getting a good job. But in the workforce, there's no rules to this game, right? Like you could be working super, super hard and
Yeah,
you just don't have the right opportunity, the right exposure, the wrong timing, and you just could go years without seeing any like tangible results, whether that's, a merit increase,
yeah.
promotion, like switching companies, dealing with, all that. So I guess what was that awakening moment for you where you're like, dude, the rules to this that either don't exist or is totally different, and I guess how are you able to adjust? Because there is a ramp up period.
Yeah, for sure, brother. You're so right about how college is very linear. I mean, obviously in life we can't control all the variables, right? But in college you have a bit more control of the variables, right? Whereas in the real world, there's so many variables outside of your control that contribute to why you can't get a job, right? I know a lot of folks right now they're struggling to get their first role, and as you know, you and I both know, right? The market today is a lot different than we were graduating around 2019, 2020, right? After the pandemic between like 2020 and 2021, 2022, right? Tech scene was booming, right?
Right,
There were jobs everywhere, right? And now we're seeing like, oh my God, either they're doing layoffs or they're automating, which means they're about to do
right,
some more layoffs. You know, you
right,
know. So it's been yeah, I would say it's been like it's rough. It's rough. Like if you're looking for a job right now and you're looking for that first role, I believe, in my opinion, Adi, that the first role is actually the hardest role. The first role, in my opinion, is the hardest role because companies, right? And you can't think like an employee, right? You got to think like a business person. If I'm a business person, and if I can hire someone with years of experience at the same rate as someone fresh out of college, as a business, what do you think they're going to do?
experience. It's a
E-
lot. You're de-risking your investment, right? You're de-risking your investment.
Exactly. Right? It's less risky. As a business, I'm like, hey, if I can hire the same person at the same hourly rate or same salary rate at the same compensation, I can get more out of this person because they have years of experience, which is what we see right now where entry level roles are being taken by folks with more experience. So I would say, during 2019, that's when I graduated, right? That's around that time is when I was applying for jobs from between like 2018 to 2019, right? So all of my senior year for 10 months, I've been like applying, crying in the car, applying some more, And man, bro, it was crazy, man. I remember, I'll never forget, brother. Like I remember two or three recruiters that would come to recruit at San Diego State. They would take my resume every time, look me dead in the eye, and tell me we'll be keeping in touch. I didn't hear nothing from them, right? And I'm not saying I'm owed a response. I'm not saying I'm owed a response, but I do think there's a healthy level of decency you should have when you're talking to a student, like, hey, listen, I see your resume, given your skill set and what you're doing right now, we're not hiring for this specific skill set. At least tell me that, right? But don't take my resume, right, and tell me time and again. And mind you, there's like two people that did this to me like twice,
Yeah,
right? They just take my resume, we'll be keeping in touch, and never kept in touch again, right? And I'm not saying I'm owed a response, but at the very least, don't take my resume. Don't give me high hopes, right?
right.
So it was rough. It was rough, man. It was rough applying for jobs, just being told no, being told no. Because now, right, your value system, this is when your true faith of God and your values start to kick in. It's easy to be happy and praise God and praise the powers that be and be grateful when things are going good, right? Now, when things are not going your way, can you still maintain that same level of faith? right? Can you still maintain that level of discipline and consistency with continuing to apply for jobs, even though you're not getting the outcome you want? Because applying for jobs, right, especially as a senior in college, your parents, your family are looking at you. How come you don't have a job yet? So and so got a job.
Yep.
Your cousin got a job,
Your neighbor got
right?
a job, right? Like his
Your
cousin's
neighbor got a
cousin got a
job. How come
job.
you don't have a job? How come you don't have an engineering job yet? How come you haven't been hired? You know,
Right.
like you're getting these, you get impressed. Everybody around you is pressing you, and now it gets even worse, bro. Like now you're starting to let self doubt creep in. You're looking up and you're saying, God, why me? Why is everybody
Right.
getting a job but me? Am I not worthy? Right? You start questioning your own value as a human being, your personal worth. You start questioning that. And the reason why I'm harping on this is because a lot of people go through this phase, especially seniors in college, right? They go through this phase and they start questioning their self worth because they're unable to get a job. And I want to say that your self worth is not tied to you getting a job.
Bars.
Now,
Yep.
still pursue getting a job, pursue starting that business, whatever you want to do. Right? Still continue, keep going on the pursuit, right? Still keep
Right.
going on the pursuit, but don't let it be a reflection of your self worth. Your self worth is based off of you putting your best foot forward every day. And if that's the best you can, and that's what you're doing, you're putting your best foot forward every day, then God so be it, things will go well for you. I definitely want to harp on that, that for those 10 months, I felt like, wow, I'm not getting a job. I'm a loser. I wasted my time in college. These were the thoughts going in my head. And I'm sure everybody, like, I know a lot of students that go through this. I know students that are going through this right now, and I just want to share this encouragement that if you are putting your best foot forward and you're doing the right things that lead to the outcome, it's only a matter of time. So keep the faith.
Absolutely. That applies to any job seeker right now. I think I
Yeah,
remember going through layoffs, man. Dude, trust me. When you're down bad, holiday season is the worst time because why? You gotta
yeah.
see everyone and their mamas. And what is it? You and I both know, as men now, what's the first
Oh, for
question
sure.
everyone asks? How you doing? What are you up to?
Yeah, what you working on?
Yeah,
What, what you been
what do
doing
you
these
work at?
days? You still at that big tech company? Yeah. No, man. Listen, yeah,
So
the holidays, man. The holidays are uncomfortable, man. You still not married yet? Okay. All right. Yeah, you start getting interrogated, man. Start getting interrogated during the holidays. God bless our families. We love them. Shout
right,
out to our parents and our siblings and our cousins and
right,
aunts and uncles. Even the ones we don't like. We love you too.
right. Yep. But yeah, I feel that. I think my question there, if all obviously, like I think for us, growing up being like first, like growing up here, right, from immigrant backgrounds, we were taught to work hard. So I think that's half the equation. But if we look at
Yeah.
the job search now, right, especially with AI, I think like there's the other part of the game that you don't really realize until you're in it. Like in the sense of like
Hmm.
where you talked about building relationships, or you got that
Yeah.
first job because of referral. There's so many people to this day, which is really sad, man. They will go through life applying to thousands of jobs, that realizing you got to invest in relationships now because it's about who knows who. Like again, you have to be
Exactly.
you have to do the other part, but if you don't
Yeah.
do that part of building relationships, planting seeds, then you're
Yeah.
just slowing down your process to get to where you want to go. And especially now, I think it's super important. So I guess what's your thoughts and when did you realize that was important too?
Yeah, bros. I realized early on that relationships were everything. When I first got that student assistant job on my senior year of college, I got that job off of referral from my friend Kevin, right? Even now, every position that I've held, I had a colleague or a friend put in a good word for me to get that next position within a different team. Right? I've worked at the same company the past five and a half years. I've promoted a good amount of times, and I've worked on different teams. And to navigate within an organization or even change companies, right? Or get that first job. Nowadays it really does boil down to relationships, right? Think about it. Like businesses are looking at all of their processes, all of them, and the question they're asking themselves is. The question that they're asking themselves are, can we automate this? Can we automate this? Can we automate this? That's the consistent question. Can we automate this? And if we can, if a business realizes they can automate something, I bet you they will. I bet you they will. If a business owner can automate a manual process that takes time, that takes labor, that takes resources, and they can automate a process, they are going to automate it, right? Automation has existed for as long as we can think of, right? There's all types of automation that exists, but AI is the next evolution of automation. There's going to be a lot more, you know, companies using AI as a means to automate processes, which means companies will be smaller. We're going to see smaller companies, leaner companies, right? And today, technical skills are still relevant. You always have to have technical skills if you're in the tech space, right? You've got to have technical chops. Now, I believe, this is my opinion, I believe the next generation of tech professionals are going to need to be a lot more emotionally intelligent. They're going to need to be more sharp with their communication, both written and verbal, right? And if you're good with communicating, then you can build relationships faster. If you're an effective communicator, you know how to say the right thing and when to say it. You have emotional intelligence. You know how to read the room. You know how to put your best foot forward, right? So I would say today, if you're trying to get your first role or if you're trying to start some type of business, and you need customers, understand that it's gonna be difficult. It's gonna be difficult, and you'll have to, quote unquote, network effectively. And the best way to network is to network with a frame of service in mind. Like, hey, I'm not trying to have my hand out and get something from somebody. I want to make it very clear that I also want to be of service to them, right? That, in my opinion, is the highest level of networking. When you're not there just to take, you're there to also contribute, right? And I want you to know, regardless of where you are at within your career, maybe you haven't got your first role yet, you have something to contribute. You have something to contribute, right? You can comment on someone's post. That's a contribution right there. Take them out for lunch, take them out for coffee, right? That's a contribution right there. Tell them how much to tell the person you want to get mentorship or wisdom from how much, how inspiring they are, right? Things like that, you have something to contribute, right? So networking also, before I end off and end here, is understand that networking, real network at the highest level, is pure relationship building, and relationship building does take time. So if you're in college, or you're someone that's trying to pivot into the tech space, you know you have to make sure that you're watering your relationships, metaphorically speaking. You're watering, you're pouring into the relationships, right? And eventually keep watering, right? And then months or years go down the line, and then you look up, you're like, wow, I guess it's harvest season.
I love that. And no, Abdi's living proof of that, man. I think anytime I check LinkedIn, Abdi's usually showing love to someone he's met at a conference, or like, commenting, saying great. It's like you're pouring into people. And I think a lot of people don't realize it's like people sometimes are scared to give value because they're worried that the message might not resonate with folks. But when you actually interact with their content, you're allowing them to help other people and in turn help you. So like it's like the process of reciprocity. So I love that you mentioned that. My next question, man, was I think you talked about relationships, which is great. And I think, you and I were both kind of graduated like right before the pandemic. And I don't know about you, but personally for me, right,
Yeah,
just given family situation, I had to be really careful with stepping outside the house, given, like the pandemic and such.
yeah,
And so when I first got back to the office, man, like, dude, I was a wreck socially. Like, it just took a minute to getting used to working with people in person, right? It's crazy because we went from, at least for me, like the first 7 months of my first job, in person every day. And then maybe
yeah,
worked remote one day, to now like learning what it's like to not overthink if someone's walking by or they're checking on you. Like just all these things in a workplace environment. Like it took a minute to get used to. But I'm curious for you, what was it like to go to that first conference post pandemic, things opening up, versus maybe going to a lot of virtual events? And how have you leveraged and tapped into, investing in yourself and going to, these different conferences to, one, learn new skills, and two, really build those relationships? And how do you think that's impacted you? And like, what would you recommend other folks to?
yeah, brother. So that first conference I went to after things started to open up, because the pandemic, it took a while, but yeah, that first conference I went to, quote unquote, post pandemic. I'll be honest, I had to recalibrate myself a little bit, because I wasn't used to seeing that many people inside a venue. And I think it was 2022. The first conference I went to was, and it was actually a really big one too. It was the AWS reInvent conference in Las Vegas. So I went to that, and I was shook, man. I was shook. I was like, whoa. Let me just. I like to consider myself a social butterfly, but I'm like, okay.
Right.
Like I'll have an interaction with somebody. I'm like, oh my god, that was awkward. I was being weird. I gotta relax. I gotta relax. I'm out of practice. But I realized it wasn't just me though. A lot of people, you could feel that a lot of people that are at the conference. Somebody I saw some folks with masks on, right? And it was just folks getting used to being outside more often because around that time I was working remote. You know, during 2022, a good chunk of 2022 I was working remote. Yeah, man, it was it was weird, man. It was weird, but after a day or two at the conference, eventually I got back to the swing of things. But yeah, I haven't, not I haven't like I haven't got hit like that ever in my life where you don't socialize for a long time with a bunch of people to, boom, you're in a room full of thousands of people. Go walk around, say hi, shake hands, take photos, kiss babies, all that good jazz.
Absolutely. No, that makes sense. Yeah, because I think it was like we went from like 0 to 100 back to like zero, and I think everyone had their own like way of getting back to that. So no, I'm glad to hear, and I think too, from your perspective, do you feel like if someone's trying to get into tech, right? The best way to build relationships is at a conference, and two, if not that, I guess when do you feel like it makes sense to invest in going to conferences and like courses, man? Because I think the reason why I ask is because I feel like there's so much noise out there, man. Now, which is great. There's a lot of people who are giving information, but I think people can get just like sidetracked by the minute because like, oh wait, I want to do this, I want to do that. But then like, they overthink and essentially like you go from having the energy, the vision to want to do something, month and time past, you don't do anything. But you also know people who maybe like just over index on I gotta invest in myself and they maybe just invest in a lot of different courses, but they don't actually take the steps to get to where they want. So I guess is there a framework you have personally when it comes, okay, like if I'm gonna go to this conference, I'm gonna invest in the certificate, here's why I want to do it, here's how I think it can help me, or just, yeah, what is your framework there?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. Analysis paralysis is real, especially in tech. Oh my God, there's so many places you can go. You can get into software engineering, front end, back end, full stack, incident response for cybersecurity, governance, risk and compliance, security auditing, DevSecOps engineer, DevOps engineer, platform engineer, you know, man, there's so many different paths you can go. And tech sales, sales engineering, like it gets crazy. A hardware engineer, firmware engineer, AI engineer. It's like it gets crazy. There's so many different paths you can go. Product manager, program manager, customer success. There's a lot happening, right? So
Right.
what you have to do, and this is something I think is a very, very important skill, you know, for any practitioner or any soon to be practitioner, right? One of the most important skills you'll have to have is how to make a decision in a timely manner, right? And sticking with that decision, tuning out the noise and sticking with that decision. For example, if I say, hey, I want to study Linux operating systems, okay? I want to understand the fundamentals of Linux operating systems for the next 3 months. What that means, Adi, that means I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on that. That means I'm not studying 100 other different pieces of technology at the same time. I'm not studying AI, ML. I'm not studying, cost engineering, cloud security engineering. I'm not studying all these other things. I'm focused on Linux right now, right? That is what you're going to need. And for me, what's helped me, and again, I don't think I've mastered this yet. I feel like I'm definitely doing a better job. I would say, for me, what's helped me is I have to ask myself, what is the end goal here? Is it this next position? If it's this next position or role that I'm looking for, or this potential business opportunity that I'm looking for, I have to focus on that, not what the homies are doing on LinkedIn or Instagram.
Hmm.
I can't do that. I can't rob myself of that. I can't rob myself. I do every time I'm obsessing, right? Because I think there's a healthy level of comparison. I think you should
Absolutely.
compare a little bit as humans. I think a healthy level of comparison is good. I think what's unproductive is when you say, hey, this person got this outcome. How come I haven't got that outcome? Oh, hold on, hold on. You're playing a
Slow your
dangerous
roll.
game.
Slow
Slow your roll, buddy. I gotta say, buddy. In
Right.
corporate America, you gotta say, buddy. Listen here, bud. You know, you gotta slow down, buddy, because that's a dangerous game you're playing. Because there are so many factors that go into someone becoming successful. There are so many factors to someone progressing faster than you. There's a lot of factors that go into it. You know, yes, compare a little bit. I think it's good to, in a healthy, competitive way, to push yourself. I think that's good. You know, what's not good is when you expect the same outcome as someone else when you haven't put in the same work.
Hmm.
And maybe
Right.
the way the man upstairs, the way he set it up was, you know, it's gonna take you longer, but that's your path. That's your path, right? I can't beat myself up because I'm not a chief technology officer today, at the age of 28 at a Fortune 500 company. Are you crazy? Most CTOs at a Fortune 500 company, they're in their 40s and 50s
I was about to say,
and
yeah. I mean,
60s. Like like it's you can have big dreams, big goals, but you also have to have to be mindful of that. So I would say, if you're trying to figure out that path, be curious, do some experimentation. But number one, don't compare yourself and tune out the noise. Be intentional of how much social media you consume and create a plan and stick to it. Create a plan and stick to the plan.
love it, dude. I feel like you were talking to me. I'm not gonna lie, I love LinkedIn, but Loki has turned to Instagram in the sense of just like, with all the updates. And so
Oh my God, the updates are bananas, brother. Dude,
the
it's
worst
crazy.
are like the ones where it's like, I had a life event happen and here's how it tied to my role. Or like, I'm just like, I'm happy for you, but we really didn't need more of that.
Yeah, like I got engaged this past weekend. Here's what it taught me about tech sales. Sir, my man, fellas, come on. Now you're just click farming, man. Now you're just thirsty for engagement. Like, what are you starving for engagement? What are you doing?
Right,
What are you
right,
doing? Man, I've seen so many of those posts, and I think, Ahdithan, like, I don't know if you realize this, but a lot of people, they make those type of posts, right? And they'll also use ChatGPT for the caption as well, to generate the whole post, right? It's one thing
right,
to use ChatGPT to fix grammatical errors of your original thoughts,
right,
right, or polish a little bit, but to grab your stuff exactly from ChatGPT and have that type of click farming, being thirsty for engagement or starving for engagement, you know, I think a lot of people are getting tired of that. That's what I've noticed on LinkedIn. A lot of people are getting tired of that. A lot of people are starving for real content. Don't tell me about how you close this $5 million deal. Tell me about how you felt like you got punched in the gut when you had a multi-million dollar deal, get slipped right through your fingers.
right.
Tell me about the
Because
time when you
that's
got
real.
laid off, because
Yeah,
that's real. That's part of
right,
the success story, right? Don't tell me about that time you just got that promotion. Tell me about that time when you thought you were going to get the promotion, but instead it went to someone else. How did you navigate that? I want to know about that too. Your successes, I want to hear them. I really want to hear success. I love hearing successes, right? But I also want to know, okay, when things didn't go your way, how did that go? Right? Those character building days, how do you navigate those days? Right? Because we learn far more from our failures than our successes. Our successes will not teach us nearly as much as our failures. It's not even close. It's not even close. When those times, LeBron, Kobe, or Jordan, they'll tell you themselves, Kobe, rest in peace, but, you watch these interviews where they say, yeah, I learned a lot more those seasons where I didn't make the playoffs, those seasons where I lost the championship. I learned a lot more, you know, those seasons than the ones I won, right? Because when you miss the mark, right, the mirror's right in front of you. The mirror's right in front of you.
you can't
You
hide
didn't
it.
get the promotion. You didn't get the bonus you thought you were going to get, right? Someone else took credit for a big project that you did. So you didn't get your shout out from your VP or directors. You didn't get the big bonus. Or someone, you had this big deal going on for your business that you were about to sign, but it got slipped away from you for some legality reasons, right? For non-compete reason. I had a speaking contract that I had, in November, right? And I was looking to speak at this big event. Things were looking good. Event got canceled. No money. That thing punched me in the gut, bro. I ain't gonna hold you, man. That one hurt. That one hurt.
I can imagine. I
Man.
can imagine.
I'm like, but then you realize, well, this is what builds the character. This is what builds the gratitude, right? And character and gratitude is what you'll need to get to where you're trying to get to. I guarantee you that.
Another bar, man. We've had 150 of those
Clip that
in
up.
45
Clip that
minutes.
up
I
right
almost
now.
ended the
Clip that
door.
up. Ahdithan Show. You already know. You already know. Serious business. Creme de la creme. I can't lie to you, man. I can't. I have to be honest and do right by the people listening to this video right here.
For sure, absolutely. I think with that, man, you highlighted the next thing I wanted to shout out to you about, right? Because I think a lot of people, whether it's the exposure, whether it's how we grew up, or whether it's the self-limiting beliefs that we put on ourselves, right? We kind of feel like because we do one thing, we can't do something else.
Hmm.
And I love that you foreshadowed to it, but I think just because you're thriving in tech doesn't mean you can't do something else. I love that you've leveraged your experiences, right, where you're going, what you've done to now also be known as a prominent public speaker, soon to be world prominent public speaker. We won't get into
Soon,
soon.
soon come.
So,
Praise God, it's coming. God willing,
absolutely.
it's coming.
And so with them, I guess I would love to learn what was the beginnings of that and how you got that? How did you
It's a good question. So all my life, you know, I remember as a kid, like a teenager, I remember watching Obama speak on stage. Like, not like I didn't watch him live, but I remember the inauguration. I remember his political rallies. And we're not trying to get political here,
of
folks.
course not.
This isn't a political statement. We're just talking about Obama's ability to speak. All right. Now I got to make the disclaimer. Opinions are my own. These are not the opinions of my company. These are my opinions. These are Abdie Mohamed's opinion. All right. So yeah, I remember watching Obama speak. I'm like, oh my God, that guy can speak. Like, it's so inspiring, so captivating. The way he tells a story, the way he motivates people. Watching the movie Gladiator, right? Or watching the movie 300. Just watching them speak to crowds of people. I'm like, wow, this is freaking cool. This is like a superpower to speak life into people, inspire them to action. I'm like, oh my God, I want to do that when I grow up. That was always in the back of my head.
Hmm.
And yeah, and as I'm getting older, I'm watching like Eric Thomas, as a teenager.
Hey, shout out to
And I'm
Eric.
talking, shout out to Eric Thomas, shout out to ET, the hip hop preacher. And this was like ET early on when he was like speaking at community colleges and classrooms and stuff. I think he still does that today, but I don't think nearly as much. I think he's doing a lot of other things. But shout out to the good brother. But yeah, man, I was watching him. And in college, I was like, all right, after graduating, I want to do more speaking engagements. And you know, for like 2 or 3 months, I was getting into it, and then I was like, nah, I'm not qualified to speak on anything. Don't do it. Don't do it. You're not qualified. You know, Fell off for a few years, and then it wasn't until around like 2.5 years ago when I mustered the courage and I said, I want to speak, but I don't want to be someone who speaks on motivation. There
Hmm.
are motivational speakers out there, and shout out to them. Right? They have a role to play in our lives and on this earth. They have a community of people they need to service. But my goal is not to just motivate people, right? Because as you know, Ahdithan, right? Motivation is fickle. We can't rely on motivation to help us create the outcomes that we're looking for in life. And I don't want to be known as a motivational speaker. I told myself I want to be a thought leader within my space. So I want to be a thought leader in technology. And I also want to be a thought leader in leadership and communication, right? And eventually, a spoiler alert, down the line, years from now, I want to retire from my tech career and teach leadership and communication full time because I believe the gap of leadership and communication will continue to widen as we adopt more technology, specifically AI. I think the need for folks to be very literate, to be effective communicators, it's going to go higher. It's going to go higher. You need to know how to talk to an artificial intelligence agent. You got to know how to talk to chat. You got to know how to talk with people. You got to
I
know
was
the
about to say.
risks of these, right? Like you got to know the risks of these technologies that you're using. You have to have the emotional intelligence and wherewithal, the wisdom, right? And that's what's going to be most important, right? The days of being a technologist and just hacking away at your keyboard, in the background, right? Those days are dwindling. I think more roles are going to require to be more emotionally intelligent, right? Because for example, if you can't effectively communicate to an AI agent, you can't effectively communicate or effectively prompt, something like a Chat GPT or Microsoft Copilot. No, this is not an endorsement. Although y'all are welcome to send the check whenever y'all feel comfortable
Right.
to, y'all are welcome to send the check. But no, this is not an endorsement. But yeah, like any generative AI tool that you might be using, right? You have to understand you got to be an effective communicator, and you're going to be working with people still, right? And I think for me, down the line, I want to teach leadership and communication, similar to Les Brown, Jim Rohn, Jocko Willink, John Maxwell's, and so many other phenomenal people. Like the good people like Hafiz and Joe. Shout out to the
Absolutely.
good brothers. Like
That's the
good people like
same.
Hafiz and Joe who've successfully built a community, continue to pour into many other leaders, across the world.
Well, I love them. I didn't know. Again, I love doing this because there's things I didn't know about people that I thought I knew pretty well. So that's great, man. Even just from the clips I've seen, I feel like your messages have been profound and genuine. Because again, we're to your point, we're now going back to an era of authenticity, which I love. Because again,
Yes.
look, we all got people we look up to. Like, I love listening to Hormozy stuff. Man's on a different level, on levels and levels, right? So there's
Yeah,
obviously
he's on his
inspiration
own.
I
He's on
take.
his own level. That brother's
Right,
on his own level. He's
right.
shout out to
But
Hermosa. That man. Wow.
I love hearing to your point. It's more, I can appreciate when someone said, look, man, I got laid off, but here's how I bounced back. Here's what I did. Because that applies to a lot of people. Because we're going through an era of transition, a lot of uncertainty, and people just want to know that they're around other people, right? And I think social media, for better or for worse, look, I mean, we've learned, right, through through perception economics that you got to put yourself together. But there's a difference
Right.
between presenting yourself best versus also maybe over indexing on just the aesthetic of things and maybe not being real. And so we see a lot of people who
Exactly.
just over index on that, and someone will interpret that as that's a deficiency in them, but they're not competing against another human being, And I guess that it's cyclical. So I guess it's really important to find people that are real and use that as your sounding.
Yeah, bro. Like as you know, man, like the best leaders are relatable. They're relatable. You know, if you come off perfect, and you never share your losses, you never share your faults, you never share your shortcomings, you know, people are gonna think like you're like Mayweather. You have this perfect record, right? But I can say this: I don't doubt that at one point Mayweather got knocked out in sparring.
Of course.
Like this idea of you being perfect, you've never taken losses. No, 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 that doesn't exist, right? And I think for me, whenever I take advice from a leader or I try to learn from somebody, I always ask the question: is this person willing to share their battle scars
Mm,
to get to where they were trying to get to? And which is why I love watching, Hafiz. Shout out to Hafiz. Shout out to Joe Hines. Shout out to, all the different practitioners across different domains in this world who are online sharing their wins and losses, right? I can learn from you, a lot more from your losses than just your wins, right? I have mentors in my life that I look at. My dad. I look at my dad. I look at I've lived with my dad for most of my life, right? And I've seen my dad struggle with different things, right? And I've seen him at his best. Today he's at his best. Shout out to my dad,
hey,
OG,
that pops.
killing it. But yeah, like I think so many of us are starving, man. We're starving. We want to see real stuff. We want to see people we can relate to, because that ability to relate to one another, that's the inspiration. That's the inspiration.
Right.
Right? If you're a leader and you can show people, you can relate to them, and you can show that, I was just like you. I know the situation because I did it. I know what it feels
Right.
like to fail a course in college. I know what it feels like, to get laid off. I know what it feels like, to get a contract, the rug pulled onto you, a contract pulled right onto you, right? I know what it feels like to fail in business. When people, as a leader, when you share that, right, that's what's going to attract more people, and you're going to be able to pour into more people. And what does that do? That inspires people to pour into others as well.
Most definitely. I love that. I think, part of leadership, right? We talk about sacrifices, right? And I think for you, man, just going back to what you're doing in tech, I think one thing that I love that you've embraced is like you've been willing to make that sacrifice for now, like in this season of life, to be
Yeah,
away from like your comfort
yeah,
twice, right? And I
yeah.
haven't done it one time. It was tough, man. So shout out to you to find
Man,
a new community, like go somewhere you don't really know people and build that as a home. So I guess what advice do you have for people there? I guess knowing what you know now, I guess if you're coming out of college and you gotta just take that opportunity, even if it's like you gotta move somewhere where it's not ideal. And I guess how can they find and develop a home within a new community? Because it's tough. It is tough.
yeah. So for context, folks, I moved from San Diego, California to Florida for my first job, and I did not, visit Florida ever in my life. I
Whoa.
went straight from San Diego to California. I mean, from San Diego to Florida. And, I was fortunate enough to be a part of a fraternity, and there were a lot of folks in the fraternity and alumni who were kind enough to kind of show me the ropes when I moved to Florida. Right, shout out to those good brothers, and that was a game changer. But I gotta say, man, that move, and if you've moved from your family, you definitely know what I'm talking about. When you move very far from your family and you're moving your stuff in, you're in your apartment all alone, or you're in your room all alone, and you're like, wow, like this is it. I miss my family. This is painful. This sucks. Did I make the right decision? Was I too selfish?
Ooh.
Was I too selfish? Did I do the right thing? I'm away from my siblings. I can't influence them as much as I'd like to. You know, did I abandon them? Did I abandon my family? Right? These type of questions start to creep in. When you move far away from your family. Did I abandon my mom and dad? Do they think that I no longer love them or care for them? Right? These are real questions, real
Absolutely.
thoughts that as young adults we have when we make that move. Right? And it was tough, man. It was tough. Making that move. But I'd say having a sense of community did help. Having folks from the fraternity that I knew helped out a lot. I'd say if you are moving somewhere, there are a lot of things that you need to do immediately. All right. But one of those things you need to do immediately is find a sense of community, whether it's at the mosque or the church, at the temple, synagogue, whatever it might be. Right? Find, a community, of folks that have a shared value system as you do. Right? And that's so important. As human beings, we need community. This idea of being a lone wolf, what do you call it? Sigma male? Is that what we're using the term these days? Sigma male? Yeah, whatever. It's called, like, this idea of being a lone wolf. There is no such thing as a successful individual. There are only
Mm-hmm.
successful teams.
Mm-hmm.
Life is a team sport. Life is a team sport. The notion of you being self-made doesn't exist. You're not self-made. There are people that contributed to your success, whether you like it or not. Whether it's your family, your loved ones, your friends, your customers, your advisors, your investors, whatever it might be, your mentors, whatever it might be, your pastor, your imam, whatever it might be, right? There's no such thing as you being self-made. Life is a team sport, and so, and then when you're making that move to a new environment that you've never been to, you have to find that community, right? And you got to put your ego to the side. And I'm talking specifically to us guys that struggle, building friendships. Because in high school and college, it was easy. We're in the same class, we see each other on campus, easy, right? But I know especially a lot of men, they struggle with building friendships. When it comes to adult years, and being an adult in general, right, man or woman, but being an adult in general, it's harder to build friendships because it was kind of like on autopilot when you were growing up. And you have to understand, you have to intentionally put time into this. You have to intentionally put time to find a community, right? That means going out to events, going out to trying out different gyms, trying out different networking events, brunch events, whatever it might be, right? Or run clubs. Oh my God, run clubs.
Hey, yeah, that's the
The
new wave
greatest,
now.
the greatest invention known to man. Low costs, low budget. You understand me?
Right.
Man, but
Amen.
yeah, I think finding community is really important, and the way you do that is putting your ego to the side and just go outside, go, just go to the gym, go run the 5K, go meet some people, right? Go to the local coffee shop, talk to the coffee shop owners, get to know them, find one person, that person will turn into another person, right? And pray on it, pray on it.
Love it, man. Dude, we can chop it up for hours, but I want to be mindful of your time. So rapid fire, two more questions for you. The
All
first one,
right,
Abdi, knowing what you know now, man, right? If you were to say have a coffee chat with 18-year-old you, y'all meeting up at Starbucks, he's like, man,
yeah.
what advice do you have for me entering adulthood? Or just life. Like, what would you tell your 18-year-old self if you could meet him right now?
You sure you want to hear what I would like to tell my 18-year-old self? Yeah, yeah, yeah. You gotta promise you don't laugh at me, bro. Because if you
Nah,
laugh at
man,
me,
dude.
I'm gonna be hurt. My feelings are gonna be
Nah,
hurt,
man.
man.
Your truths are your truths, and we're here to
All
embrace
right,
the truths, bro.
all right, all right. Once we do post this though, folks, don't grill me. No, I'm just joking. But what I would tell my 18-year-old self, I tell my 18-year-old self many things, but one of the main things I tell them was, "Hey, I know, bro, that your confidence is going down because your hair is thinning a bit, and you know how much your hair means to you as a man. You know how much confidence you got from young ladies telling you how beautiful your curls were. how awesome your curls were. And know that losing your hair doesn't make you less of a man. And when you shave your head, it's going to actually be the best decision you'll make in your life. You'll be just fine. Everything will be fine. You'll do just fine. Everything will be okay. I would tell my 18-year-old self that. I mean, I tell him lots of things, but that's one of those things that I would tell him because losing my hair at that age, at 18, I saw how my hair started to thin, and my hair was a big part of my identity as a man. Right? I'm like, oh, if I'm going bald, man, caught a fight. It's over for me. Like
Right.
it's over. This is it. This is it, bro. I'm not saying my hair was as pretty as yours, Ahdithan, but man, I had the curls for the girls. You understand me?
Imagine. I mean,
I
you
had a
still.
man, I had a hairline, bro, legitimate hairline, and yeah, my hair started thinning, for whatever reason, genetics, stress, whatever. But more than likely genetics. I got a bunch of uncles that are bald. But yeah, man, I saw my hair started to thin, and it really shook my confidence. I think about 3 months, I was pretty sad for 3 months. Coming to acceptance that my hair was thinning, and at that point, there wasn't much I could do about it. Uh, I'll tell my 18-year-old self that, hey, man, this hair that you have on your head, it doesn't define who you are. Matter of fact, eventually you're gonna shave it, and people are gonna tell you how awesome you look with the bald head. Cause I look awesome with the bald head. You understand me? You understand me?
You killing
So
it.
yeah,
You're killing it without it, bro. So I mean,
yeah.
I feel like God had to take that away to not give you a total cheat code because it wouldn't be fair for the rest of us,
It
mortals.
wouldn't be fair. Yeah, God has to balance things out. To all you fellows with hair out there, just understand me being bald. It's to your advantage. No, I'm just joking. I'm happy being bald, man. It's the coolest thing ever. I don't have to worry about going to a barber shop nearly as much. It's one of those things. You look older, and as a man, looking older is pretty awesome. And
It's a
if
game
and
changer.
I'm only 28, by the way. I'm only 28, right? So when I'm like in my 40s and 50s, right? I'm gonna hopefully look like I'm in my 30s because I'm bald.
Cheat code. You ain't got to worry about no receding hairline or anything like that. You're good. You don't have to worry about that. So, no, that's profound. Sometimes to your point, it's the most simple message that's the most powerful. So I'm sure 18-year-old appreciated that. And two, man, dude, you've been cooking up a lot. You on your podcast tour now. You got some speaking engagements coming up.
Yeah,
Through it all, man, I guess what are you excited about for the rest of 2025 that you have cooking up that you can share with us on this
yeah,
iteration?
for sure, for sure. So what I'm most excited about 2025 is getting into the best shape of my life. All right, I took about a month and a half off after I completed a 10K and 75 hard challenge back in February, and that month and a half off I took, from like I barely lifted, I didn't run at all. I did some serious damage to my body. All right, I got my DEXA scan today, and I'm like, oh no, body fat is a little higher. Lean mass is lower, right? So what I'm excited about, in 2025 is getting the best shape of my life and staying there,
Mm,
right? And finishing a half marathon because I got that in June that I've been prepping for the past 2 weeks. So I got
okay,
about seven
okay,
weeks left. I got a half marathon, and God willing, I'm gonna do a high rocks challenge with all the homies in November.
okay.
Clip that up too. Take it to
Hey,
the bank. It's going
they
down.
gonna hear it. They
High
gonna hear
Rocks
it before then.
Dallas, half marathon San Diego in June, High Rocks in November. That's the plan. And here's the thing, right? I done like if I don't get in shape, I'm gonna get exposed when I pull up to those events, right? So I have no choice but to get in shape. There's no room, there's no opportunity to slack off. I gotta be as consistent as possible, put my best foot forward as possible, whether it's nutrition, sleeping, and taking care of myself. So I'm excited. I'm excited. A lot of other things too. Stay tuned.
We will definitely keep posting. And Andre, if you're listening, Abdi's coming for you. I know that's been on with this.
I haven't told him. What's funny? I haven't told him. I gotta tell that brother. I gotta shoot him a call. Like, hey Andre, I'm going to Hyrax. I gotta let him know. Shout out to the good brother. Always
For
always leading the
sure,
way.
man. Well, brother Abdi, I've been proud to see the growth you've had in just a couple years since knowing you. You've been crushing it. Sky's the limit for you, man. I look forward to doing this again in person sometime soon when we have some more receipts from you. I expect nothing but greatness from you, and I appreciate you hopping on.
Adi, thank you for having me. For everyone watching this, please believe in yourself and continue to put your best foot forward, and the magic will happen. Stay blessed.
Love it.